Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about be careful who you take advice from when you're looking to invest in property. So my name is Simon Zutshi. I'm the author of Property Magic, the Amazon #1 property bestseller. I'm the founder of the Property Investor Network with 50 network meetings all over the UK, and I've been investing in property for 25 years. And I can honestly say, over that time period, there have been some people who've given me some incredibly fantastic, valuable advice, and there have been some people who've given me really bad, poor advice. And the problem is, sometimes it's difficult to distinguish between those two groups of people. So in this video, I want to give some hints and tips so you can make sure that when you're getting advice from people, you're getting advice from the right source. Now, one of the reasons I'm doing this is because, you know what, over the last 10 years in the UK, the property market's pretty much boomed. It's been very easy to invest in property and make money. But we know the property market doesn't always go up. Sometimes the market goes up, sometimes it comes down. And my concern is this: there are lots of people popping up, call themselves property coaches, property mentors, and that's fine, you know, that's really good. There's lots of choice of people. The problem is many of these people have only been investing themselves maybe 5 or 6 years and only been teaching other people for 1 or 2 years. And they've only been doing it in a boom market. Over the last 25 years, I've seen the market boom, crash, boom again, crash, and I really understand what happens in a property cycle and how you need to adapt your strategies to take account of the property market. So that's, first of all, property trainers. Be careful to understand how long have they been investing, what's their track record, you know, have they got many successful clients that you can learn from and just check them out. That's the first thing. The other thing that's a hidden danger when it comes to learning from other people or getting advice from other people is there are certain experts, people who you would think they know what they're talking about, and yet they may not give you correct information for your property investing. What do I mean by this? So let me give you some examples. So when I first bought my second property, my first investment property, if you like, I bought a house in 95. I stayed there for a number of years. In 98, I bought another house and I moved into that, and I turned my first property into a student HMO property. And I had a financial advisor come from, I won't say what bank, it was a bank, the bank I banked with at the time. And he was one of the top financial advisors in the whole of the Midlands area. And my bank manager, this is when you knew who your bank manager was, had said to me, Simon, do you want to have a chat with a financial advisor? I had some money in my business bank account because I had a part-time business running student nightclub events. I wasn't spending much of my salary because I had my tenants covering my bills. So I had quite a bit of money, and I decided to buy another property. And so my bank manager said, yeah, we'll send this guy around. This guy came around, a really nice guy. We sat on a sofa in my home, and he helped me with my pension. He helped me with some insurance, things I didn't have in place. Then we got to talking about property, and I said I really wanted to buy a new property to move into. Now this financial advisor, a guy called Kevin, he assumed that I was going to sell the first property to buy the next property. And that's what a lot of people do. When they move up the ladder to a bigger house, they sell the first one to give them a deposit to buy the next one. But I didn't need to do that because I had this money in the bank that I could use as my deposit to buy the second house. And when I explained to Kevin that I wasn't going to sell the first one, I was going to hold on to it and I was going to rent it out to students and I was going to move into the next one with my friends, Kevin said to me, he said, well, that sounds awfully risky to me. Now, I must admit, at the time I was, I don't know, maybe 28 or something. And this guy who was much older than me, who was one of the top financial advisors, was telling me how risky it was by renting this house out. And I must admit, it kind of stopped me in my tracks for a day or two. I had a few sleepless nights. I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just buy this house and sell the first one and pay down the mortgage and have a nice low mortgage because I'd have more money. And that's a good thing to do, right? We all know that we're told that debt is a bad thing and you should pay down your mortgages. So I really wrestled with this. And what I remembered was I'd met my student landlord, the landlord who owned the property that I lived in when I was a student. And he lived in a massive house on one of the poshest roads in Birmingham called Farquhar Road. Had this huge house. And I remember asking him as a kind of a cheeky 19-year-old when we first moved into the rental property, said, because we went to his house to sign the contract, I said, excuse me, I hope you don't mind me asking, what do you do for a living? And he said, well, I used to be a solicitor, but I'm now just a full-time landlord. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but when we were living in his house, he came around a couple of times. I had a cup of tea with him one afternoon. He explained he had all these properties and that, it had done very well for him and his family. And I think something went into my head. And I thought, yeah, maybe I want to do that one day. And I think that's where I got the idea from buying these properties. And yet this financial advisor, who you'd think would know, was saying that's really risky. And when I look back now, I realized that was my first lesson, that you need to be very careful who you take advice from. Now, Kevin was a lovely guy, really smart, very successful at what he did. But guess what? He didn't know about property investing because he didn't have any property investments. He only had the one property that was his home. And it was a nice big home. He was successful, but he didn't know what he was doing. And he was extending his experience into an area he didn't really know about. And I want to warn you, because you might have some professional advisors, accountants, solicitors, who are all very clever people and they want the best for you, they want to protect you, and they might advise you against doing certain things because they're trying to protect you, but actually it's coming from a lack of experience. And so I would always ask someone, if someone's giving you property advice, I say, well, can I ask you, are you an investor yourself? How many properties you have? And in fact, the number of properties is not as important as what they actually do for you. I would rather have 10 properties that give me a really good income than 100 properties that are only just covering their costs, right? So the number of properties is not important, but what do your properties do for you? Unless someone has rental properties and they know what you're trying to do, they're never really going to understand where you're coming from or what you're trying to achieve. So when you put your power team together, your advisors, your mortgage broker, your solicitor, ideally you want people who are actively investing in property themselves so they really understand it. We've had estate agents, mortgage brokers, chartered surveyors, builders, all of whom are expert in their relevant field, come onto my property mastermind program, and they've been blown away with what we taught them because it's outside of their area of expertise. Let me give you another example. So an ex-girlfriend of mine, she had a property in London. She'd lived there a number of years. Then she went and lived overseas. She worked overseas and she rented the property out. And when she came back to the UK, she decided she didn't want to live in London. Her parents were based in Nottingham. We met, I was based in Birmingham. So she moved into Birmingham and we eventually moved in together. And she decided to sell that property so that if we were going to buy a house together, she could put some money in as a deposit with the money I was putting in, which was great. So she put the property on the market, sold very quickly, and her accountant was an accountant who had his own practice. It was a one-man band. He did it all himself, but he was a former tax inspector for the government, for HMRC. So you'd think, tax inspector, HMRC, he's going to know all about taxes, okay? So she sold her property, and when you sell a property, if it's your own home, there's no capital gains tax. But because she had moved out and she'd rented it for a while, there was some capital gains tax to pay. And so he contacted her and said, right, yes, there's £4,500 of tax to pay on this property. And I looked at it and I ran the numbers, and I've spent a good amount of time and money educating myself about property tax, because when you make lots of money, you want to legally minimize the tax you pay. Obviously, that's what all rich people do, right? We use the tax laws to our advantage. So I'd studied this and I understood it. And she told me the figures and I thought, no, I think that's wrong. I think there are certain allowances you can use where you don't have to pay any tax. And she said, oh, I'll ask my accountant. So she said to the accountant, said, oh, my boyfriend thinks that what you've calculated for the tax is wrong. He said, oh, don't be silly. I've been doing this 20 years, blah, blah, it's right. So he came back to me and I thought, okay, well, maybe I've got it wrong because I make mistakes sometimes. So I went and looked up my books where I've got some information about this and checked. I said, no, I'm pretty sure that because she lived in this house, it wasn't just a rental, there's some personal landlord relief she can get. And so we went back to the guy and he said, no, I've never heard of that. He said, I've looked on HMRC website, I can't find anything about it. And he was right, on HMR website, there's nothing about it. So I kind of thought, maybe I'm wrong. And then I went and asked a property tax expert I know. He said, no, you're absolutely right, Simon. We went back to this accountant and he said, let me ask around. He asked around, he came back and said, you know what? You're right. I've been an HMRC tax inspector for 20 years. I'd never heard about this thing because he wasn't a property tax specialist. And he said, you're right, actually there's no tax to pay. So my ex-partner would have paid £4,500 in tax that her accountant said she had to pay, because he wasn't a property specialist. So getting property specialists around you, people who really understand this field, and that's their speciality, that's what you need to do to be a successful investor. So I just encourage you, one of the things you can do if you say, okay, how do we find these right people? Well, as you know, I run the Property Investors Network. We have 50 meetings around the country. They were physical meetings, they're virtual at the moment at time of filming this. You can go to a PIN meeting, and there's details below in the description, and it's very low cost. It's £20 to go along, and there are some great speakers there. You can get an update on the mortgage market and that kind of thing, and learn from great strategies, but also connect with other people. And you could ask for recommendations. So before you go to a network meeting, think, okay, are there certain people I want? Maybe I want a reliable plumber in a certain area, or I want a tax specialist, or I want an a solicitor who understands purchasing options. Whatever you're looking for, stand up, there's a 20-second option, say, hey, here's what I need. And there are people there who will help you, they'll give you the leads you need. So ask for recommendations, always do your own due diligence, check people out before you work with them. Ask them, what have they done in the past? Are they investing themselves? You want to work with people who are investing and understand it. For example, all of the mortgage brokers who speak at the Property Investor Network meetings, they're all investing themselves because they understand. I've heard other horror stories of people who've gone to a broker and they're not fully independent, they don't have access to the full market, and they've been told, oh, you can't get a mortgage, or you can't do this. Well, actually, someone who's got access to the full market will find you the very best mortgage that's suitable for you and your personal circumstances. So it's so important to make sure who you listen to when you're getting property advice. Make sure the people have done what you want to do. They've gone there. They've got the war wounds and the battle scars, which means you can avoid the mistakes they've made. That's the smartest way for you to learn about successful investing and accelerate your journey. So some hints and tips there. I do hope that's been useful. Click on the link below if you want to go and check out the PIN meetings. If you've never been before, you can come as a guest completely free of charge, normally £20, but in the description, the details how you can come to your first meeting completely free. Come along as my guest. And then also, if you like this video, please smash the like button, click on the bell icon so you get notified when videos come out, and also subscribe. If you subscribe to the channel, it means you won't miss any of these videos. I've got hours and hours of great content available, so I'd suggest go and watch some of the other videos. There's lots of you there, and you know, pick up lots of information completely free of charge to help you become a more successful investor. So subscribe, click on the like button, click the bell button, and I look forward to seeing you on another video. In the meantime, invest with knowledge, invest with skill.